Middle Podcast, the podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, slackers, and welcome to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. I am your host, Jason Eck, and full disclosure, I am a bit crabby this evening for a number of reasons, one of which doesn't really affect anyone right now because I record everything with video. But I haven't been putting everything up on YouTube as video because I can just go ahead and do the full audio feed right out of Spreaker, which is what I use to record. It's my podcasting platform. That's my provider or distributor, whatever it is. And I do everything there, but I record everything in StreamYard, right? I record it in StreamYard. It gives me audio, it gives me video. So when I do the video, it's all right there, easily editable, all that kind of stuff. Or I can do the audio only. And with Spreaker, it turns the audio into basically a video. Now, mind you, it's just a video player showing in the background, but it's very effective and it allows me to go ahead and utilize YouTube as a platform without my having to do a major shit ton of editing, which I have to do when I do video. I could carve out more time, and one of the refrains of this past year in particular has been my lack of discipline. Really, the past few days been working on that. So part of my crabbiness is giving up yet another vice. So I have been sober, 10 months now, just shy of 10 months. And part of what I did to replace drinking beer was drinking soda. So then I was kind of alternating. I'll say, okay, if I drink too much of the Coke Zero, yes, it's 0 calories, but that means that I'm having like a ton of aspartame, phenylalanine and all that. Not necessarily great for you. Or if you have regular Coke, in the United States, by the way, regular United States Coke, that is filled with high fructose corn syrup, which is just as bad, if not worse. I don't know. Yes, you can go ahead and get the, Mexican Coke, which is made with sugar. Honestly, at the end of the day, all sweeteners, sugar in particular, all of it is poison. Sugar is like the worst thing in a lot of ways. And really, alcohol, all those kind of things, it's fermentation, it's sugars. It's all bad for you. So giving up soda, today is my first day. Yes, I still drink a ton of coffee, so I can get the caffeine that way, but there's something about the fizziness of just a good old pop, as they say in the Midwest. And I do love, like, good old-fashioned Coca-Cola, or nice cherry Coke, or whatever it is. Love all the Coke products, frankly. So I've given that up, which means that I'm going to take one more vice away, and that would leave just one, which is, actually two, really, smoking. Please, just cure the cancer, please. And gaming. But gaming I'm going to use as part of my overall platform and some other things that I'm working on, which I truly am. I just have to get some of these crutches out of the way because I do find that it ultimately impedes my discipline. Particularly if it's, not risk reward, but like reward. Like what's my reward system? So right now, okay, I'd finish up something, have a Coke or have a cigarette or whatever it is, and trying to find more positive and healthy rewards for a job well done. Or just the work itself could be the reward. The other thing I'm a little grumpy about, I had mentioned that, my wife and I had a business, unfortunately closing the doors on that, which means that anything that wasn't able to be sold is either in storage or in my house. So with this, there was a bunch of moving of things around, and I've been using a basic I have a setup down in what we call the studio, and anyone who has seen the video feed knows what that kind of room, basically what it looks like. And in order to facilitate my wife now working, more often from home, like she's always had the opportunity to work from home. There's like a whole monitor system that she had to put in place, which means that I had to swap out one of the monitors that I used when I do all of my work for the podcast. Well, I thought, okay, I'll just swap it out with one of our other monitors. And I never really thought about it until I sat down to record this evening, and nothing was working properly. And all of the levels and the height and all of that the dimensions of the monitors couldn't have been more different. So I was trying to adjust like this monitor to get my height set up. So I had a mount style. That wasn't working. I couldn't get it any lower. Anyway, I had to grab another monitor that we had, hope that it worked. The refresh rate, the actual quality of it, all of it is very diminished. So the rig that I'm using right now just sent me backwards in time, like a good almost year, probably. So I feel like I'm using a very rudimentary rig. It doesn't feel comfortable, I guess is no other way to put it. Like the lighting that I use down here, all of it is just off, the way that it's shining in my eyes. So I'm grumpy. And then I was grumpy at work today. Yeah, I'm a grumpy guy. So I kind of felt like, and I've been thinking about this since last week's episode, I'm going to do one of those, and I call them from time to time, a back to basics episode. Let's just pick a year and let's dig into Billboard, baby. Right? It's what brought me to the dance in the first place. Hopefully I'll stick around and have gone back and listened to some of those. But I decided I was going to just pick a year kind of randomly. Now, one of the things that I've done, and I looked through, I did some, late 80s into 90s, right? So there was that whole shift from the hair metal bands into grunge, right? That was interesting to me, like 88, 89, 90. It's kind of interesting. 86 was kind of an iconic year because a lot of those hair bands broke really, really huge in 86. And then I went back in time to some stuff in the 70s, particularly, some of my earliest years. And like, some of the stuff in the 70s is really, really cool. And I did 79 because there was this also, the change of the decades is always interesting. So it just happened somewhat organically into that 80s into 90s between, like I said, the hair bands into grunge, but also hip hop making a shift. It wasn't about, Run DMC anymore. It was about NWA. And then this whole other kind of new school, literally leaders of the new school, A Tribe Called Quest, groups like that were putting their own unique spin on hip hop. So it was very organic. But in looking at like 1979 into 80, a lot of those artists continue to remain pretty strong. And just looking at 1981 as a whole, just to kind of break it down, I do find it so interesting. Because whenever I do these Billboard lists, there's songs that I'm like, wait a minute, this was a year end. Like this is your Hot 100 for the year end, which means it's everything, charts, sales, all of it. And some songs I just don't ever remember hearing. But then the songs that are memorable for a reason. And that's where you get to see from each decade, like the icons that are begotten from each decade. And how some of the things that I know that my kids listen to now that they think from my time, back in the 1900s, the stuff that's really cool. And you go, man, it's always been cool kind of thing. You know what I mean? So let's dig in. And as I am wont to do with any kind of countdown, I like to start at 100 and work my way up to number 1. Now, right away, so sad. So sad. This is how we start off this list. And that's with number 100, Time is Time by the late Andy Gibb. Now, Andy Gibb, the younger brother of the Gibb brothers, Barry, Robin, and Maurice of the Bee Gees, was only 30 years old when he took his own life, seemingly from a bad breakup that he never recovered from with Victoria Principal, I believe. But anyway, here he is with Time is Time. I don't remember this one. I bet if I turned it on right now, I would immediately go, oh, yeah, I know that one. Yeah. Poor guy. Absolutely poor guy. I mean, it can't be easy being the youngest of like an iconic family. Do you know what I mean? Like they're the freaking Bee Gees. Have a couple of the top selling records of all time, and certainly the top selling soundtrack of all time is Saturday Night Fever. Plus they wrote the whole soundtrack for Grease too. I mean, just killers when it comes to songwriting. But anyway, that's way too much time there. May he rest in peace. I hope he has found peace. And I know at least, gosh, have 2 of the brothers also passed away at this point? I know Barry's still alive, right? Yeah, Barry is 77. Robin passed away in 2012 at age 62, and his twin brother Maurice passed away in 03. Wait. Is that true? He passed first? Holy cow. Yeah. No shit. Anyway. Wow, Barry's the only one. That's sad. Anyway, next we have, and I mentioned him on the Yacht Rock episode, Mr. Boz Scaggs with Miss Sun. I'm less familiar with this song, but I'm sure if I put it on, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's it. I get it. The Boz. Now, here's one that I am so surprised how low it is on the list, because I remember when this song came out and it was massive, and that's I'm Coming Out by Diana Ross. Holy cow. And I think part of it is just thinking of Diana Ross from the Supremes and how she gradually evolved, right, with each, I guess, change in music, going from just purely the girl group doo-wop R&B into like disco. And what a queen, right? But Diana Ross, that song, I'm Coming Out. And I just watched a drum video recently because that was produced by Nile Rodgers. And I'm forgetting who the drummer was, but he, I guess, was a session drummer on that. And it's a killer song from a rhythmic standpoint, too. Really, really great. Now we have Rosanne Cash, the daughter of Johnny Cash, here with 7-Year Ache. I do not recall very much except for a handful of songs of that 70s and 80s country. I know later 80s country, but I don't remember that song at all. Really Want to Know You by Gary Wright. Isn't that the Dreamweaver guy? Didn't he just pass away? Yeah, he passed away this past week. But yeah, I just remember Dreamweaver. And this is Really Want to Know. Oh, I think I do know that. Anyway, here's a name. Here's a name that is all over this list. And I remember kind of having a crush on her, I'll be honest, but Prince also had a crush on her. And she had just a run of hits, like a really big run of hits. And here's her first big one, I guess, which is Modern Girl by Sheena Easton. But she's on here a number of times. I remember Modern Girl, but only very vaguely. So what I do is when I do this, I typically don't listen to a ton of it. Rather, I'll do the podcast and then go and kind of listen to stuff kind of on my own. And I encourage you all to do the same thing. Just go check out these songs. Because I think that some of them, once you hear them, you go, holy cow, I remember that. And I know everybody knows the next song, number 94, Whip It by Devo. But all those guys, there's Mark and Bob Mothersbaugh, but like Mark Mothersbaugh is an absolute like beast when it comes to like soundtracks and mostly soundtracks, TV, movies. Like he really does it all. Very much a composer in his own right, which if you really listen to Devo, despite this kind of like new wave electronic thing they were doing, certainly a forerunner. And I know this sounds odd, but of groups like Nine Inch Nails, like honestly, like they were the first ones, and really they're composers. And it's more complex than I think than people recognize. So Whip It, very much a classic. The Beach Boys Melody. Like I jump around a little bit. I won't go through each and every one. But here's Sheena Easton again at number 92 with For Your Eyes Only, which of course is from James Bond. So she got to be a Bond soundtrack. This is a great song. I'm not so sure it's a great movie, but when I say that, I just have to say that this is the Roger Moore era. So one of these days, I'm going to do a 007 episode. And I'm not as steeped in the lore as some, so hopefully I can find perhaps a guest, someone who wants to come on and talk Bond. But Roger Moore was my Bond. When I was little to the 80s, it was all about Roger Moore. And I kind of liked his characterization, and it stuck with me for a long time. And I know that people cry foul on this. So again, not to go too far off on a tangent on Bond, Roger Moore's number one for me, but I really like Pierce Brosnan. People, well, no, it's got to be Sean Connery. And then some people are like, well, no, George Lazenby, he just did the one, but it was the best. Daniel Craig and poor Timothy Dalton. I mean, he gets no credit whatsoever, and I think he was pretty good. But anyway, moving on. Suddenly, Olivia Newton-John and Cliff Richard. Cliff Richard. Oh, boy, that guy. All I can think of is a recurring joke on the young ones. Let's see. Hall & Oates are here with their cover of You've Lost That Loving Feeling, which is originally, of course, by the Righteous Brothers. We have Barry Manilow, I Made It Through the Rain, followed by Ronnie Milsap with Smoky Mountain Rain. It's all about the rain. Heart, Tell It Like It Is. Okay, so now, number 86. Not my favorite Beatle, but my favorite era of this Beatle, and it's so unfortunate because it was posthumously released. So, of course, I'm talking about John Lennon and Double Fantasy and a number of hits off this record. Double record. His first in, 5-7 years, something like that. Completely reinvigorated by song making, songwriting. Here he is at number 86 with Watching the Wheels. That is such a good song. And somewhat, just from glancing at the list, I'm a little bit disappointed that this one wasn't higher than some of the other ones that are on here. Because I think this is probably my second favorite solo John Lennon, and no, number one is not Imagine. Let's see, Barbra Streisand and Barry Gibb, Treat Me Right, Pat Benatar, Hold On Tight, ELO. Let's see, number 76. Before he destroyed his career dancing, we have Billy Squier with The Stroke. I remember that song being absolutely everywhere. It still is today. It got sampled by Eminem. Like, The Stroke is such a big anthem. It is stadium music, and well-deserved. I mean, those first couple of Billy Squier, he had some great songs, and one bad music video really tanked a promising career. And I know what he was trying to do and kind of, expand his horizons and what he can do as a performer. But man, that just did not take. It did not take. Oh, and here we have another former Beatle and George Harrison all those years ago. That's a good freaking song. So I think I've said it before, but George Harrison, you can't say underrated. Like you could at one time in talking in terms of like the Beatles themselves, because so much of it was Lennon and McCartney compositions, right? But George Harrison as a solo artist did exceedingly well. Like, he crushed it. He absolutely killed it. And All Those Years Ago is a stunning song. There's just something about his musical quality and just how different he is from George and Paul. Like, they're all so different from each other. But yeah, there's just something so easygoing about his voice and the way that he sings, and just how he, articulates and even enunciates certain words. Like his turn of phrase, his phrasing is just so very good. Let's see. We have Stevie Wonder here, Ain't Gonna Stand For It. Steely Dan at Hey 19. I just listened to, based upon a recommendation from Carlos, I mentioned that my Steely Dan, understanding was not super deep, and, I really needed to spend some more time with it. So I listened to the album start to finish, Katie Lied, and I was surprised, by the number of songs I knew, but how even the songs that I didn't know had a certain familiarity to them, and I really enjoyed it. So, Carlos, I meant to text you back that I listened to that record. It's quite good. So I'm kind of getting on the Steely Dan train. I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, but I'm definitely starting to see the light. Better late than never, right? Here we have the Police with Don't Stand So Close to Me. That I'll leave that song right where it is. This is definitely, Sting was in a place. He was in a place during the, 80, let's see, that's, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Zenyatta Mandata. And, he definitely had some interesting songs around this time. And there's another that I believe is on the list. It just shows his, lyrical prowess. Let's see. We have Neil Diamond with Hello Again. Up Steve Winwood, While You See a Chance. Eric Clapton, I Can't Stand It. I have always been love-hate with Clapton, certainly an appreciator. But again, talking about how something is said or sung, I can't stand it. Like the way that he says that line, I love it. There's just something about it. It's really good. How is it described here? A dark driving rocker with Clapton's vocal lurking ominously around drum spanks and keyboard textures. Okay. Huh. A reviewer here says Eric Clapton's biggest hits from the early 80s and found this song found him continuing to be as much a musicologist as a musician. The lyrics have a venomous jealousy, and they are some of Clapton's most literate of the period. Okay. Well, thanks, buddy. Let's see. We have Alan Parsons Project, Games People Play. Yes. Okay. So this makes sense. 1981. I was thinking about where I was living. So I always try to contextualize things where I was living. Because we moved around a lot when I was a kid. And I'd mentioned on one of the earlier podcasts that my first piece of musical equipment was a hand-me-down. And it was a sound design record player, turntable / AM FM radio with an 8-track. And one of the first things that I ever recorded off the radio was that number 65, Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. I loved that song. Absolutely loved it. I was, 7 when it came out? And I just was all about it. Just doom, doom, doom. Like, think about that. You're 7 years old. That is a bop and a half. That is a banger. And I recorded it. I recorded that. And You Got Another Thing Coming by Judas Priest. Here we have another yacht rocker from the Yacht Rock episode. We have Christopher Cross with Arthur's Theme. I don't even know how that guy sings. Like it's a range and vocal quality that I can't even fathom. Like, where does it come from? I don't know. It seems nasal to me. I don't know. We have a first appearance, I believe, because this doesn't even have a link to the song. We have John Cougar. Remember John Cougar? Before he was John Cougar Mellencamp, and before he was John Mellencamp, he was John Cougar with Ain't Even Done with the Night. We have Neil Diamond with America. Was that from the Rocky soundtrack? No, the Jazz Singer soundtrack. Why do I think it was Rocky? Oh, you know why? Because I'm thinking of like Apollo, all dressed up, Rocky 3. I don't know why. Yeah, I just have an association there. Cliff Richard, A Little in Love. Oh, okay. Number 59. So I've mentioned that my oldest boy in particular, huge Fleetwood Mac fan. But he is what I would call a Stevie Nicks-ite, and I, of course, am a Lindsey Buckinghamian, making up words. But I've never been a huge fan of Stevie Nicks. However, when she hits, she hits. And you would think that two people that, in my estimation, are not known for having particularly stellar voices. I'm not a fan of Stevie Nicks' vocal tone. I've never liked it. So to pair her with Tom Petty, and yet somehow this be one of the most magical duets in the history of music. That is not hyperbole. Stop Dragging My Heart Around is amazing. It is such a endearing song, like just their interplay and how their voices actually really enhance and work with each other. I mean, obviously we're so used to Stevie doing those vocals with, Christine McVie and Lindsey Buckingham and really creating some lush harmonization. You just wouldn't think of it with these two. And yet it's magic. It's magic from the opening guitar strain. Perfect and wonderful. And my favorite of anything that Stevie Nicks has done, frankly. And now I mentioned the Police and Sting really working hard at putting together some really, truly amazing turn of phrase. De-do-do-do, de-da-da-da. Yes. And dancing like maniacs in the video. I will appreciate this period of time of Sting and the boys. And I never felt like, I never felt that Stuart or Andy took themselves particularly seriously. I think as musicians, they always have, but I always felt like the other two could let loose a little bit more. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're all just very serious musicians, but it was good to see them just being stupid in the video. But how can you be serious about, de do 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 de da da da? We have Journey making the list here, number 56 with Who's Crying Now. Which record is this? That's what I thought. Paradise Theater. We have Too Much Time on My Hands by Styx. This was an era that, my aunt was and is a huge Styx fan. So I listened to a lot of Styx, and she'd actually given me a couple of her vinyls because I think she had more than one copy of them because she had just a ton of their stuff or was like gifted one and she already had it. So I got a few of her Styx records as well, or I found them at a garage sale. I forget exactly, but huge fan of Styx. The whole band really, I know for me younger, it was all about like Dennis DeYoung's, like the pageantry, right? Which I think somewhat lends itself to my love of Michael Sweet from Stryper and his voice, because they're very reminiscent in a lot of ways. It wasn't until later that I realized how much of a driving force that Tommy Shaw really was and is. And his voice is also stellar. What a great band. I mean, I don't know that you could have as many big hits as they had and radio staples and be underrated, but in some ways I think they still a little bit under the radar, a little bit, even though everyone knows Come Sail Away. Let's see. We have Leo Sayer with More Than I Can Say. Frankie and the Knockout, Sweetheart. I don't remember that one. We have Bruce Springsteen here. And Hungry Heart, of course, off the album The River. That's probably the first Boss song as a kid I remember liking. I mean, I didn't listen to albums like Thunder Road until I was much older, probably my late teens, early 20s. But Hungry Heart, that could fall right in line. Like, obviously, natural evolution of where he was going as a songwriter. Because that could have been on Born in the USA in an absolute minute. Yeah, it's pretty good. I like that one. Alan Parsons Project again with Time. Pat Benatar, Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Legendary. Absolutely legendary. She and Neil Giraldo. Yeah, I was getting the comedian Nick Girardo. Are they both Giraldo? Anyway, just a fantastic songwriting duo. And Hit Me With Your Best Shot is just such a simple guitar riff. Anyone can play it. And it's like the same chords, like a million different songs. And I think that's what's so, I don't want to say it's missing, because I feel like some music is either overly contrived, overly simplistic, or you have all these just crazy samples and layered electronica and all those kind of things. But sometimes it's just a couple of chords. And that's all you need for the framework of a song. You have simple chords, but then you have Pat Benatar's voice on top of it. Unbelievable. Kenny Rogers here with I Don't Need You. This was definitely a huge era for Kenny. I mean, Kenny Rogers was certainly no longer just a, country star. A lot of collaboration with R&B artists. He did stuff with Lionel Richie. So he expanded his horizons. You could say that Kenny Rogers was, and another person on the list that's someone he frequently worked with, not frequently, but a few times, you could say are precursors to what Taylor Swift has done. And I guess in some ways, Shania Twain as well. Let's see. Diana Ross, It's My Turn. Marty Balin, Hearts. I remember that. Commodores, Lady, You Bring Me Up. Foreigner, Urgent. Yeah, been listening to a little bit of Foreigner lately. They were a recurring theme on some of the earlier episodes of the show with Justin. A lot of talk about how they're not in the Hall of Fame, and frankly, that is bullshit. Let's be honest. Foreigner should have been in already. Let's see, Barbra Streisand, Woman in Love. Never been a huge Barbra Streisand fan, but I get the appeal. Of course she can sing. Gino Vanelli, Living Inside Myself. I vaguely recall that one. I'm sure if I put it on, it would be like, oh yeah, there it is. I know that one. Yes. REO Speedwagon here again with Take It on the Run. I mean, they were on a run. That High Infidelity album, just killer. We have Styx here again with The Best of Times. We have Air Supply back to back with Every Woman in the World and The One That You Love. I mentioned before, one of the first albums I ever had was an Air Supply record. It was the one with All Out of Love, which was what? Lost in Love. No, wait. Which album did I have? Hold on a second. Because that's not the cover that I thought it was. Of course, mind you, I was very young. From the album, Lost in Love. Okay, hold on. Oh, it was Greatest Hits. I'm a nerd. Okay. Yeah. 1983, Air Supply's Greatest Hits. It's like it's just pretty simple, I think, is what it comes down to. It's Russell Hitchcock and Graham Russell on the cover. I don't know. It's just so weird to think of them coming out of Australia. Anyway, that's just like an aside. It's just AC/DC and Air Supply. You know what I mean? It's just so interesting. I think of a lot of heavy music. And if not heavy, then just aggressive. I mean, In Excess, but Midnight Oil had some aggression. I don't know. I guess it's hard to say, but they were super soft rock. Juice Newton, Angel of the Morning. It's such a killer song. I remember seeing this being covered by a band called Black Barbie at TT the Bears in Boston. Just such a great song. ABBA, The Winner Takes All. We have John Lennon with Woman, not one of my favorites. That's why I'm just like surprised that it's as high as it is. Let's see, Just the Two of Us, Grover Washington Jr. and Bill Withers. That is just, it's still on ads today. It's so good. It's been sampled. It's such a great song. I mean, you can't go wrong there. You have Blondie with their cover of The Tide is High. I played for my oldest not too long ago, the original version of The Tide is High, which is, of course, by the Paragons. Basically a ska song, I think, in my opinion. Let's see. Rapture by Blondie. Some say the first real rap song that charted. We have Smokey Robinson with Being With You. That's a good tune, man. Let's see. I mean, Smokey's career. 1955, right? So here he is, already almost 30 years in the business. just shy. And I mean, still charting hits. I mean, talk about longevity. And then Sheena Easton again, which what I think is her biggest hit. And that's Morning Train, which I also think was it a cover? Because I feel like someone else did this too. Let's see. I just feel like, did Linda Ronstadt cover it at some point? I don't know. It's a great song. It still holds up. I think it's wonderful. What's curious is that in New Zealand, it was in the top spot on the charts, and it was what knocked it off the top spot was Joy Division's Level Tears Apart. That's just like some kind of bizarro universe to think of the two of them being on the chart at the same time. It's just strange to me. Joey Scarberry with the theme from The Greatest American Hero, Believe It or Not, I'm Walking on Air. Honestly, that show, I wish they had added a little more grit somehow to it underneath all the humor, and I know that they tried to, but what a great concept and what a great song. I mean, it's legendary. I mean, you put together just, you're like, I'm going to write this song for this TV show, and it becomes a hit. How did it do by itself? Let's see. Billboard, it was number 2 on the charts. U.S. Cashbox Top 100, it was number 1. But I mean, top 10 everywhere. Only place Ireland, it was just outside the top 10. Yeah, it's crazy how popular that song was. And it was on the radio. I remember it on the radio. Absolutely. Yeah, kind of cool. Kind of cool. Here we have REO Speedwagon again with Keep On Loving You. Just keeping the hits coming along. And I mentioned earlier Kenny Rogers, but one of his songwriting partners, or at least, people that he duetted with a couple of times, we have Dolly Parton with one of her biggest hits, 9 to 5, from the soundtrack 9 to 5. And yeah, my daughter loves her some Dolly. She's fantastic. She's so good. And when she was littler, I know it's not really a word, or is it? I don't know. Anyway, she would sing like the opening lyrics, stumble out of bed. What was it? Fall out of bed, stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition. Like, she just could go and flow with it. And she was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. Loved her some Dolly Parton. Eddie Rabbitt with I Love a Rainy Night. I mean, you can't really go wrong. You know what I mean? Nothing offensive, nothing groundbreaking, just a good old-fashioned kind of rock song, light rock song. It's great stuff. I mean, is it considered, well, I guess it's considered country. To me, it was always kind of just soft rock. Good stuff. Let's see. Cool and the Gang, Celebration. I remember listening to this on this little transistor radio that my grandma gave me. Just the whole vibe of it. You know what I mean? Gosh, what is the name of the lead singer? Robert Cool Bell. Right? No, he's not the singer, right? No. It's the other brother, I think, isn't it? Or do they all sing at different points? Who's the one? It's time to get together. Anyway, they're awesome. And I used to listen to this song all the time. Yeah, I mean, just everything they do. I'm just looking at like all the instruments that they did play, both in the group and with others. Really impressive. Just a killer group. I mean, just the instrumentalists. I'm just every guy that I pull up, it's like, this is Dennis D.D. Thomas. It's like saxophone, flautist, percussionist. You have singer, songwriter. Yeah, this is him. Yeah. So this is Robert Earl Cool Bell, but he now goes by his Muslim name, Mohammed Bayan. And, yeah, he's the original. And he was also in, oh wait, that's just, never mind. Anyway, love that group. So now we have the top 5. And I don't know if you remember when Dave Grohl was doing that, whatever highways, whatever it was, where he was going to all these famous studios all throughout the country. And then he would get like people who recorded at the studios to come and do, one shots and covers and perform live with them. And he invited somebody on stage and he's like, you've really made your mark in music when they can hear, what does he say? 4 chords of a song and they know it's your song. And the guy steps up and goes, well, actually it's 5 chords and I'm going to play it. And, it was dun, 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 dun. I always do that. It's so funny. There's another song that uses the exact same chords and I always cut it off too early. Because what I just did was Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy. What I'm actually talking about is Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield. So just scratch that last part. I'm not going to edit it out, but just forget you heard that. Cause I was just listening to that the other day in the car. It's Thin Lizzy rules. Anyway. But Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl, you do hear that opening strain, which obviously I'm conflating with another song. So I won't be able to find it to hum along for you. But it's iconic. You know what I mean? And the guy uses moot. Who else uses that at the points? Probably moot. And just the way that he says, and the way that he's, was it looking at with those eyes? I just knew it. Anyway, I'm forgetting the lyrics, but how he actually says the words. Like, again, that's really important. And I think that's what makes a great songwriter when it's not just always necessarily just on the beat kind of thing. Same thing with rap. And he uses interesting phrasing to get more or less words into a given space. And he does that really well. And that's just such a killer song. It holds up forever. Really does. Now, again, John Lennon here at number 4 with Just Like Starting Over. It's a good one. But my 2 favorite songs in this album, Watching the Wheels and Days Like These. Days Like These? Yeah, nobody told me there'd be days like these. Again, because of the phrasing. Strange days indeed. Love it. Just absolutely love it. So, Just Like Starting Over, very, very good. One of his best songs, in my opinion, at least of his solo career. I was never, like I said, never really into that Imagine era. Like, yeah, it just wasn't my thing. It's a great song, but yeah, that Double Fantasy, it's good stuff. Like a lot of his best work. Unfortunately, he's a double record with Yoko, and I'm not a fan of her work, but you know what? They were in love, and this was his, return to the public eye, and it's just so damn unfortunate because you know what? They would have got back together at some point, and it would have been the biggest thing in the world, and I would have loved to have seen the Beatles play, as I think all of us would have. I'm not saying things would have changed anything for, the health of like George Harrison and stuff like that, but man, the fact that the Rolling Stones are still going, and Charlie Watt was the first one to pass. I think he was the oldest member of the band, and they're still going strong, is just mind-blowing. So number 3, so again, I said Kenny Rogers was just the man. And here he is with Lady, which was co-written by Lionel Richie. I mean, major hit. Absolutely monster. You know what I mean? Great song. Number 2. Lionel Richie was on a roll here. And here he is with Diana Ross and Endless Love. From the original motion picture soundtrack for, you guessed it, Endless Love. I mean, Lionel Richie, I mean, he is one of the greatest songwriters in the history of music. And I think somehow that gets lost. I don't know how, but he works with someone, boom, it's going to be a hit. And the two of them together, vocalizing together, even like the last sung note of that song, you go listen to it. It is pitch frickin' perfect. And here we are at number 1. Coming at you from 1981, we have Kim Carnes and Betty Davis Eyes. Wow, I just pulled up the link here. And the first thing that I see on the page, and this is almost exactly what I was going to say. I've actually forgotten what I was going to say because this is so perfect. It was called a haunting pop rocker, and that Carnes' earthy vocal rasp and guitar chimes are unforgettable. It is haunting, but not menacing. Do you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? There's just it seems almost kind of dark, but I don't know. It is an enigmatic song. There's really nothing else like it. Do you know what I mean? I think of, like for that time period, I'm trying to think other things that have that haunting quality. Let's see. I want to say, let's see if I have this right. I'm kind of thinking and talking out loud as I'm doing this. And where are their hits? Where did they go? No, it is not the band that I thought of. The Motels, Only the Lonely. For a moment, I was thinking about Quarter Flash and Harden My Heart, which I think kind of goes into that same category around this time. So like those early 80s, because Only the Lonely came out in 81 and Harden My Heart is 1981, right? So it's something about that era that I can't really put my finger on. And honestly, some of the stuff that we just talked about earlier from the rockers, those that fall within the rock realm, like Stevie Nicks too, like in this era, it is this hauntingness to it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just there's a, I don't know, what was the tone and tenor of the times? I was just a kid, so I don't recall what it was like for the adults and why songs with these particular qualities would have become so big, where they have, again, haunting or even, I mean, I understand melancholy always having a certain appeal, right? But yeah, there's just it's like a bleakness, but there's this little glimpse, a little glimmer of hope that shines underneath all of it. I don't know. Guess that's the 80s. You guys tell me, like, if you have a more clear view of what the world was like in 81, 82, particularly you early Xers, go ahead, send me a message. I'd really be curious to know. So this was our little dive into 1981. Take a sip of water here. Not a single cough tonight. I had a pseudo almost kind of burp thing, but I swallowed that. So I don't know if you all know, but there's this kind of like trays right now for these mugs. They're called Stanley tumblers, right? Because it's like a shit ton of water and it keeps it hot, keep it cold, whatever. But they're like anywhere from smaller sizes, like $40 up to like $80 or whatever. and I'm quitting the soda, so I need to drink more water, right? I'm like, I'm going to get myself a damn tumbler. Except I'm not spending that kind of money. So I go down to good old Walmart, and I will just tell you very quickly, one of my favorite brands, and I'm going to explain why. So I find this tumbler that basically looks and feels like a Stanley. Same, quantity. I forget how many ounces this is, 40 something or whatever. And it was like $20. Machine washer safe, like whole thing, right? Because some of the stuff that you'll buy will be, it'll say that it's, stainless steel inside, but, it can't go into the dishwasher, whatever. This washes up same way, basically looks like a Stanley, and it's Ozark Trail, which is one of like Walmart's brands. Now, the reason I looked at it and said, okay, I'm getting it, is because up until last year, so 2022, I had a pair of boots that I bought on a whim. We ended up getting an early snowstorm or something, and we were visiting my family in Connecticut. And my kids, I think we just had my oldest, maybe. Maybe my daughter was born when she was little. And, which means if she was little, my wife might have been pregnant with our third. Anyway, I needed boots. I didn't have any boots. I had sneakers with me. I didn't read I just completely oblivious to everything going on around me, right? Just kids and just life. And I see these boots. They're kind of like these hikers, but they're like cold rated for like negative whatever. And it's got a steel toe boot. And they're not the most attractive things, whatever. And I buy these things. And I don't know, 18, 19 years? Okay, maybe not. 15 years. At least 15 years out of these boots. Just machines. And until finally last year, like the toe piece, like the mold separated. And I was like, okay. And I bought myself a pair of Timberlands, which probably aren't going to last the way that these freaking Ozark Trails did. So anyway, shout out to Ozark Trails. I don't know why, but it's quality stuff and it lasts a long time for a really great price. So I would love the world to be that way. Inexpensive products that are quality and last. Not with planned obsolescence and let's buy more. Anyway, so back to the charts. 1981, kind of a fun era. Just did a quick dive and going through. Let me know your thoughts. What was 1981 like? And, are there any songs that you go, wow, that took me back. I hadn't thought about that song in a long time. And now I'm going to go listen to it. Of course, you can go on, check out Wikipedia. All the songs are out there for Billboard End of Year Top 100. Check it out for the songs that I didn't mention. Certainly some great stuff on there. So why don't you let me know what you think of the episode? And you could do that by emailing me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. You can find me on Instagram, X, and YouTube at StuckPodX. Head on over to the Facebook page, Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast. Please like, comment, share, and please leave 5-star reviews. So this is very important. We got a couple recently. It really helped move some things along. Please, 5-star reviews. Even if you want to leave a negative comment, but still leave a 5-star review, that's awesome. Or constructive criticism, but love to have that number grow. The greater the number of reviews, the better it is for the algorithm. That also goes for things like Facebook, which you can actually go ahead and, I believe, rate the page as well. And most importantly, please subscribe to the podcast. So until next time, later, slackers.